Hey y'all.
Hey Drew, how you doing?
I'm all right. How y'all doing?
I'm living the dream up here in New Jersey. At least it's above freezing today. So
Hey man, it's been like awesome here. It's been in like the 70s. It's crazy.
you're down
And
in Arkansas?
in Arkansas, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it dive bombed down to being it was like negative 20 like 2 weeks ago. It's crazy. It's like
yeah,
so
that's awesome.
yeah, we've been really lucky. Mike, I'm digging that background, man. Let me change my name here. All righty. So yeah, I'm Drew from Maker Made, as you all know. As Chris knows, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can lead off. I've been playing with this thing, and again, you don't have it behind you anymore, but I built
Yeah,
that
I'm not
setup
with
that you
it.
had in your office. I'm curious. I'm curious about this. So I've been going through the calibration. I've made a couple of test pieces and cut some. I get really excited about text messages. So let me just mute this out. Um, I made some test pieces, and I got the thing cut and dialed in the accuracy. I was within a millimeter on these squares. I
Awesome.
didn't notice though, as I worked my way up the wasteboard, the top of the longer cuts. I actually made a piece. I was making a control panel for a thing. I'm going to make a touch screen for it because I think that's just cool. And why not, right? But the long cuts now, especially up on the top of the wasteboard, like 3-4 inches from the top, I'm getting a very pronounced crown on the x-axis. And I tried recalibrating. I tried changing the measurements. I couldn't. I read all of the blogs. So some guys said firmware. Some guys said holy calibration, which sounded interesting, but that was for the older Maslow's version ones. I'm an M2. Um, so I got mad at the thing. I started playing around with the $1.83 and 84 values, which is the height above the wasteboard and the width of the beam.
Mhm.
And I found that if I make the beam 40 millimeters, 40 millimeters or so longer than it actually is, that arc kind of goes away.
Ah,
I've got it a little bit smaller than perfect. So I'm looking for some advice on whether that's normal. As I go down the wasteboard, it gets less and less and less. And when you get to the bottom, down by the stands that hold the material in place, the ledge, it's practically non-existent. But up on top, when I first started, it was
kind
almost
of
half an
curved.
inch. Yeah, half an
Is
inch. I mean, it deflected pretty good.
and so it's like as it goes down, then the curve just kind of flattens out
It
as you're
flat,
going.
yeah, it flattens out until when you get down near the bottom, it's
Okay.
practically non-existent. And the way I figured that out, because I chewed up all of my scrap wood, I actually mounted a pencil. I turned a pencil down and mounted that in the router chuck and had
Oh
it
yeah,
drawn
good
squares and
idea.
lines and stuff. So, you know, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So firmware was a big issue. So I'm running Makerverse 106, and the firmware on the do board is 11G.
Okay.
That's what it
Is that the
identifies when it
newest
starts. Is
firmware?
that
Is that
I
the
didn't
newest firmware?
I didn't flash it. It's whatever it came out of the box with.
So I'm pretty sure that's the older firmware then.
Okay.
And because I think it's 112. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
11G is what it identifies itself when it boots.
so when the like the new version of Makerverse, if you move on to that, if you want to move into that, you have to flash your firmware first to go into it. But if you're cutting in 106, then I mean that's great too. And some of those things that we've tried to fix in the new version of Makerverse is to try to make it so you don't have to trick the program into doing that kind of math.
All right.
Because
So
what
what
you're
I
doing is totally something that you can do because you're basically fooling the arcs for the math to help it so it doesn't
right
curve off.
chain angle and
Exactly.
base length of the triangle that it's calculating. That's what gave me the idea. I haven't started cutting more parts today, but I'm pretty confident I'm going to get decent usable
Yeah.
parts now because I'm close, but it's not perfect. And I'm reading in the blogs that you guys are getting like 0.5 millimeter accuracy, and I'm wondering what I'm doing wrong. Really, what I wanted to know is if you would share your $1.34 and $1.83, 84, 85, and 86 values with me from your machine,
Yeah.
and
Let's
I'll
see.
just see how that works for me. If yours is cutting straight, those ratios should work for me, is my thought.
Yeah. I
But
think I don't know
is
if
that a
I can.
com?
Oh, I can't read it from here because I'm not with it right now.
All right, no worries, no
Um.
worries. I can join next week. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not a big deal.
So
I
with
was. Is that a
with
normal
those
thing? Is that what you guys do? You just sneak up on it like that?
That is some stuff that I've heard about doing. It's kind of
Okay.
like tricking the value of it, because I know that Mike did that for his frame too.
This was my
kind of
day
like
yesterday.
moving some
All
of
it
the
on.
stuff around.
It's all my
Nice.
numbers.
And I know that he did that for his frame, because it's basically dealing with your motor offset. Because we talked about that, and I think you had your motor offset. It's at 18.
Well, it's 20. It's actually, I know you said on yours you had to move yours higher, and so I started creeping mine up to 21 inches, and that actually made the problem worse. So I brought it.
Okay.
I made the beam longer virtually, and brought the top beam down, the offset, to its exact height of 20 inches, and the line flattened out for me.
Well, I mean, if that's working, that's awesome.
Well, all right.
That you can tweak with it to get it to kind of go through, because my values are and so I uninstalled 1.0.6, so I have 1.1.2 on my other
Okay.
computer. Because that's one of the things that you have to do. You have to uninstall the old version to install the new one.
Okay.
But all those values that I had calibrated for it should be in there for the ones from 1.1.2. So the Holy calibration too is in 1.1.2, and what that is it actually goes to the corners, and then you drill a hole and you measure from the hole, and you do edge calibration in that too. So your sled will move around each one of the corners and the top and the bottom, and then you input those values as well in 1.1.2.
Okay. There was also talk in the blogs of a simulator that you used to have for the older Maslows that you used to be able to give it values, and it would show you what that impact was, and apparently it was some of that feature function was integrated. Yeah. But it was integrated into ground control, so that they got away from the standalone utility. And then there was a bunch of guys talking. I think it was, I don't know who in the blog said, well, we should make that a standalone utility again. It was helpful. Did that ever happen? Do you know? Is that, or no?
So I haven't used a Maslow. I joined in M2 times. So I want to get a Maslow. I think Mike might have gotten a Maslow. I'm not sure if he's been using ground control on it. But
I just got a Maslow last week, and so I should be putting it together this coming week or so, and then that way I can do a lot more support.
Yeah, and so awesome. So with ground control, it's not supported anymore, and it would lose values. In the old board, the old like Mega board that Maslow had, like it wouldn't hold the values on it, so you could lose the values if it got disconnected and things like that too. So so the N2 has that like onboard memory and some stuff like that. And I know that they took some stuff from ground control, but I'm not sure. I think that like some sort of digital widget, if you could test it, I mean, that sounds like a good idea. So that's totally something that that we can see. And in Makerverse too, if you want to go to like I don't know if you're familiar with GitHub.
I am.
But okay, awesome. So you can go to the Makerverse GitHub. 1.1.2, and you can add like feature requests and stuff like that too, and be like, hey, this widget was cool in ground control, and you can add that stuff on there too.
Okay. And the only other question, I don't want to dominate the call, but the only other question I had was during the testing, I get so excited watching the thing move that I forget about where it's actually moving to, and then driving it off the cutting surface. I see in the parameters there's hard limits. Is there a max travel where I can say, look, if X goes bigger than 32 millimeters or 32 inches, stop? I see it calculates. If I move machine center down, because I figured, all right, I didn't know whether machine center had anything to do with the arc, so I was playing with that. So I thought, all right, if I built a full scale Maslow, this thing would be 72 inches tall. So my center would be much lower than my actual work center on my setup. So I dropped it down low. And when I try to go below that, below the 36-inch throw that a normal Maslow would go, I was higher actually. The carriage jerks. And then if you try to make it go down in Y, it'll actually start going up the workpiece, which is kind of interesting. So I thought, all right, the controller knows it's at the bottom of its travel. I don't know. I mean, I assume that.
So Chris is the main programmer for Makerverse. So I'm not sure about the soft and the hard limits. I do know that it has a limit when you put in the dimensions of your workspace.
Yes.
Because a similar thing happens like for your like Z-axis. It has
Z-axis. I've run that thing all the way up to and it starts. Yeah.
And I believe it does have those limits when you put your limits in for your board size too, to help it so it just doesn't go completely off the rails. So I want to say, yeah, that does exist. So that's why I would
it exists in 1.1.2.
So that's
It
the newer
exists-
firmware then.
Yes, it exists in 1.1.2, where it actually has soft limits, and you can turn off your soft limits and you can turn them on and off, and literally inside the settings inside Makerverse.
I gotta tell you something, man. When the minute you say flash firmware to me, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have anything. Any device I've ever flashed, I've turned into a brick or a toaster. So, is there a way to download the firmware that's in there now? Because like I said, it's working now. And I would love to flash to 1.1.2 to see if it makes a difference, but a little hesitant to do that since I got a fully functioning machine almost. I mean, I'm close, you know?
I hear you for sure. Because like when you switch to the new program, like you can say that it's calibrated, but you still have to do some new steps to like get it running.
You're gonna have to recalibrate it all over again.
I'm an ASIC. Calibration to me is, you know, it's pretty, you know, benign. It's not a big deal, but the actual process of flashing the firmware and what could possibly, if I turn this thing into a toaster, I mean,
No, you won't turn it into a toaster. Just send me a message at support@makermade.com and I can do it for you. I can log on and I can do it for you. And if I do something wrong, then we'll ship you something else. But we'll get it won't burn out, you know.
Okay.
So
other than that, the thing works great. I mean, like I said, I'm getting 22-inch squares now that are within a millimeter, so I'm pretty happy with it. So.
Yeah, Chris, I can tell you this. If you look at the Facebook page, there's a lot of people that have gone from the old firmware up to the new Maker firmware.
Yeah.
I see a lot of complaints about, oh, I can't get it. It's hard to get done. But once they get it done, nobody ever says, hey,
dialed in.
Go back.
Yeah.
So
I read those threads. The other thing that they're talking about is that Makerverse 106 is good, but if you go out to GitHub, there's CNCJS. It's a 1.1.12 version that's compatible with, but offers a bunch of granularity and tuning. I went out and looked at it, but I thought, you know, that's just kludging up something that doesn't need to be kludged up. This looks like it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, if it wasn't for those damn arcs, I'd have been making pieces all weekend.
So it's been built on CNCJS. So that's the open source that it's built.
Yeah. So that is correct to an extent. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a couple other people that have actually different like Zane's on GitHub. That's the one we use, correct, Drew?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one. That's the Makerverse version. That was like originally like it's built upon that basically on the shoulders of CNCJS because that's open source. So so we've built it all like from that to be compatible with all kinds of different machines and things like that. So that's been Zane and Chris and some other people that have been working on Makerverse to be able to like
basically it's an open processor. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
A post processor.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've heard like from what we're trying to do is make that calibration process easier because I'm not going to lie, the 1.1.2 calibration process is a little confusing to get through and to kind of get through all of it. But once you get through it, then you like Casey said, then you're rocking and rolling. So
well, it's tedious if you don't know. You know, if the other thing that you could do to make it easy, instead of having somebody go in the easel, or in my case, Fusion, and putting together a 12, an 8, an 18-inch, and a 24-inch square, just publish the G code for that. I mean, it got to the point where I got tired of Fusion. What I said was, well, screw it. I went into MDI and said, okay, jog the thing, move the Z-axis down, up, over, and around with 4 commands. And that's how I was doing it, you know, real quick and dirty without having to worry about tool offsets and learning CAM. It makes it a lot faster. You could pre-program. I put buttons now on the control panel underneath that says, you know, run an 18-inch square, and it'll just jog the thing with the Z-axis down on 0 to make it a lot easier. So calibration for me now is simply putting something for the thing to draw on and pushing a button, which worked out. Saves a bunch of time of putzing around with G code and post processor.
Yeah, it's like having that in a feature inside of Makerverse would be really nice, where you could just do a calibration square.
Yeah, calibration, 18-inch square. Push the button, and if you don't get an 18-inch square, you can go in and calibrate it. That's kind of the way I've got this working now with those macro buttons, which are pretty cool.
Yeah, right on. Because that's been something. So we've talked about that a little bit in the past too, because you have to make sure that you have like the correct bit and stuff like that for that square to make sure that it's always, you know, gonna be
either a 1/4 of an inch. Mine was 0.62 because that's
those
about
settings.
the width of a pencil point. That's, you know, and then I was doing it with colored pencils so that because it looks like an Etch-a-Sketch out there now, but cool.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that advice. Yeah, and for
Yeah,
sure.
no, listen,
That's
it's a very cool thing. So
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
and I
glad you've been having fun.
yeah,
So-
I took your advice from a couple calls ago. I went out to the shop and I made a bunch of universal clamps now. So it's a
Oh, yeah.
91 inch. You were right. The square piece got in the way of those ring bearings.
Oh, it did.
But
Nice.
what I
Well, that
did
one
is
looks perfect.
I added some plastic inserts now, so you can run Harbor Freight, DeWalt, and the 91 inch routers.
I mean, I bet if you wanted to sell those, so we are out of those.
Yeah, I'm going to put it up. So I made 12 of them. I'm going to put it up on the, I got to figure out the store thing, but
Yeah.
I'm running it out in the shop. It works perfect. So
That's awesome because I know that there's some makers that would want that so they can run their larger routers because we've
Yeah.
had just a crazy time trying to keep those in stock and get them made. And with all the shipping delays and everything, it's been really hard because as soon as we got our shipment, they almost instantly sold out.
yeah,
So,
fits in
Chris,
a,
send me a message on support@makermade.com.
okay,
Awesome.
no worries. But
We're
like I
happy.
said, I got 12 of them. As soon as I figure out the store thing, I'll get them up there. And I mean, they're easy to make. It's pretty.
yeah, Mike will help you get that and we can
pretty
get them up there
straightforward.
for you because I know that they're makers I'd love to use
Yeah.
them. So
Because the other thing you can do is, just take the PVC pieces and use them for the existing 91 inch clamps. You still get a Harbor Freight router in there. So I know you guys were talking about that last week, and it's,
yeah, the small Harbor Freight one. Yeah.
yeah, because I can, you can make that inside of that ring any diameter you want. I got one for a Dremel tool. You can almost turn it into a laminate cutter if you make it small enough. Kind of cool.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about it is like any size. It's just since it's so open source, you can just like change it to cut whatever you want and get it to move around.
Sure.
So yeah, it's
You want me to
fun.
reach out to you on support at Maker Made, Mike?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. I'll do that this afternoon.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks,
Well,
Chris.
thanks everybody's patience and let me chat. I didn't mean to dominate the call, but good stuff. Thank you, Drew.
That's
Appreciate it.
great. You bet, man. Thanks for coming. Anybody else got any questions? Can help you out with? Yeah. Hey, Dave.
Oh, I think I'm unmuted now. Just wanted to check a little on I talked last week on what people are using. I gather for the software tool chain, Makerverse is strictly the machine control. Is that right? And then as far as design, people are using SketchUp or whatever. Are most people using easel for the tool path or something else?
So it kind of varies. So on what you want to do. So Casey made some really awesome videos that I got posted to our YouTube about going through the process of like taking a G-code file from SketchUp and then putting it in easel and like and cutting down large projects and stuff like that. So easel is kind of your quick and dirty way to just like get something that's designed turned into the G-code that you need, and then Makerverse runs the G-code. So we're working on trying to get those integrated so you can kind of skip the easel step, but it's a lot of work to get that to work properly. So right now that easel step is that kind of the in-between thing.
Yeah, but keep in mind that easel is good for, well, a lot of people just create signs and things like that with nice SVG files, and they want all the curves. So if you want to make little signs with all the intricate curves and detail stuff, just use pure easel because you can actually import SVG files and they have outlines that you can place into it and then place the SVG on it. The reason why people use Fusion and they will use, SketchUp is for spec files. So cabinetry, right? You want large spec components, cabinetry with finger joints, stuff like that. That's when I use either Fusion or Google SketchUp. But if I'm doing something like signs for RV campsites, all that little stuff like that, I just go right into easel and I use that.
And what SketchUp generates is a Gerbil. Is that correct?
No, it'll generate a 2D DXF file that then you can import into easel as a DXF, and it'll convert it to an SVG. So then you can place it, you can move it around, you can put in, like if you want dog bones for your joints where they're a tight corner, you can do dog bone generators. And then once you save that file and you export it, it'll create your G code that then you just open straight up in Makerverse.
So SVG has some toolpath stuff, but not a full G code.
So that's like your image. So it's like your drawing. So like if you drew something on a piece of paper, that would be like your SVG. And then, that drawing would then go into easel, and then it would generate the paths for like how it's going to cut. And you'd say, okay, well, this line is going to be, a 1/4 inch deep. And this line, I want it to be an 1/8 of an inch or something like that, where you're setting your different depths. And then you export that G code into Makerverse, and then Makerverse runs it. So Makerverse would tell the M2 to say, okay, cut this one this deep, and then cut that one that deep, and as it would be moving on. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, the SVG is basically a scalable vector graphic.
Okay. All right. And in terms of the power need, I mean, do you put your toolpath generation in your shop, or do you have it where you do the design? What do people tend to do?
That's up to you.
Toolpath can be done ahead of time, so you can do that. I do it on the same laptop that I have hooked up to the Maker Made, but what you need to have connected to the machine is what sends the G code. So after you make the toolpath, you can get what's called the G code out, and then you can import that into the Makerverse software and send that to the machine. So you don't have to have that toolpath generation on the same machine that's out in your shop or
Well,
whatever.
I'm just trying to figure out in terms of layout, this machine is going to be in a separate garage that's 50 feet away from the house. And I'm trying to figure out if it's better to have something out there to regenerate toolpaths if I run something and realize it's wrong, or if I just have it all where the design is done in the house and then walk out with a thumb drive or whatever.
I've more often than not had to change things. After I start cutting, I realize I made a mistake and be like, oh man, I need to go in and tweak this setting in easel or something like that. So I often generate and then rerun the program right there in the garage. So I would, unless your computer is really, tiny outside, I think that would be a good idea, because every now and then you just need to change one or two things, and rather than having to run inside, regenerate it, and then walk back out would be, I think, a little bit easier.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that'd be the best too, because then you're not having to go back as forth as much, and we don't recommend leaving it unattended either. So you want to be watching it to make sure that everything's going good, so you wouldn't have to leave it and come back or something like that too. So,
All right. Very well.
great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I wanted, if we have a open spot, I wanted to share a dust collections story that I figured out.
Awesome. Yeah.
It helped.
What'd you work on?
So this is the Bauer Harbor Freight one.
That's the Harbor Freight one. Yeah.
And I was drinking a water bottle, and I have a lot
Oh,
of dust
nice.
that comes out, and so I just put a pipe clamp on there. I had to cut the water bottle a little bit, but I put the open end where the dust collection goes on the Maker Made M2 sled, and I notched this out a little bit. And of course, this can get crushed, if you're going down or whatever, but it keeps all the dust inside here, and then it does get vacuumed out by the stock Maker Made dust port that I'm using all the time. So
That's awesome. That's a genius. Yeah.
it's a quick, cheap thing that almost anybody can do. I imagine you can get bigger size pipe clamps for other size routers. And then I've been saving my water bottles, and if this one gets wrecked, I'll just toss it out. But it actually makes the dust collection quite a bit improved. And, so everything's getting generated in here,
Right on.
and you can move it up and down a little bit if you want to tweak, how it works. So, but this worked out pretty well for me. Again, it's not wide enough, so it's open in the back, and then that's the part that's near the dust collection port on the machine anyways. So I recommend, trying something like this.
Hey, Matt, that doesn't screw up your Z depth at all or tilt the sled left or right, because that thing isn't going to crush uniformly, right?
It won't crush uniformly, but it's not. I think the Z thing can press harder than this
Pretty
thing.
powerful. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you could even cut another one and then put two together for a bigger router, and that's an awesome idea. Yeah. I'm totally gonna do that.
So I recommend doing that, because if you're using that regular M2 sled, it does do dust collection, but as Casey found out, there's stuff that gets around the sides, and since this one is smaller, it fits in the hole really well. So I think it works out pretty well for me. I cut out a sign the other day and it worked out really well. It collected almost.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're working on like a modified acrylic that has like a smaller. It's kind of similar to that, only it's in the sled. So like the acrylic is modified, so then the bit goes into it for like the modified sled is what we're coming out with like the new version. So that's awesome. That does the same thing as like keeping all of that material like in there, and that's good with like suction and everything else too. It's been like holding everything in there.
Yeah, well, like I said, the thing isn't big enough to go all the way around the thing, so I have a little gap here, and again, I put that against the edge. It doesn't suck in, anything. The plastic just sits there and goes up and down. So,
Awesome.
So for now, it worked out pretty well. I just wanted to share that with y'all because something maybe cheap that somebody else could use.
Thanks for sharing. That's super rad.
Hey, Casey?
Oh, you're muted, Casey.
Yeah.
Is that printed? You print that?
Yeah. So this is the one I just posted this on our Facebook page. So this is the production style one. I have plexi on the top, but you take your dust ports and just snap them into place, and then you have your top that goes on it, and you'll have a top for different size routers, and then these just go on your component here. It snaps on, and you end up with this. And this, it screws to the board.
Nice.
With silicone right here and right here on the bottom, and it completely seals it. I don't know, it catches probably 95% of my dust, and the only dust I don't get is the stuff that comes out from underneath the board. So I get just a little line along the bottom of my board, even after cutting a whole day on a 4x8 sheet. But that's, the thing is all the dust that comes out from under there, under the sled itself, it's lost its velocity, so it's not airborne. So I sit in here and I drink a cold beer, and I don't have dust in the air, and I don't.
Spewing everywhere. That's awesome.
That's right. And the nice thing is inside of this, whenever the router's in here, all the airflow from the bottom of your router, that's how it cools. It draws air in the top and it blows out the bottom of the barrel on the router. It muffles that.
Nice.
So the M2 is way quieter. So anyway, I'm on like version 9. I'm getting ready to go to version 10, and then some people were asking for it on Facebook, so I'll probably sell the STL files or just print them and sell them however anybody needs them, because there's a lot of people out there without printers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an awesome fix too, that you could kind of hook up with any. Do you have different hose adapters and stuff where you can put different size hoses on there? Or
so each size
for like 2-inch.
Each side right here is 1.5, so you have one on each side. So that's a 3-inch volume hose, and I have mine hooked up just to a regular Craftsman shop vac, but I have it going through a small one of those Dust Deputy Cyclones, and it fills that cyclone up. I mean, you have no idea how much dust these things really generate.
Yeah, like small particles.
I'll fill that 5-gallon bucket up quick whenever it's running. So it's just, for me, it was a safety thing. I just don't like breathing the dust, especially if you're doing MDF or foam material or even PLA plastic material. That you don't want that in the air.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing that one too. Next iterations of it.
Yep.
Sweet.
Hey, Casey, you mentioned that you use Fusion to do some of the sheet good stuff. Which post processor are you using? Just the regular Gerbil one or the Maslow one? Just
the regular GRBL.
GRBL?
Yeah, I use Fusion very rarely, to be honest with you. I prefer SketchUp. Now, if you get online and you talk to people, it's a war. Everybody, Fusion 360 or Google SketchUp.
Yeah, that's a religious discussion.
For me, I'm an R&D engineer at my core, so I like simplicity, and I find that Google SketchUp is more simplistic than anything.
It's intuitive.
And as long as I got something to convert, as long as I got something that I can convert it, which is easel or whatever.
Right.
I don't get into the toolpath stuff. I don't worry about my toolpaths. What it cuts, it cuts. The Maslow's slow anyway. So, trying to optimize those, you're going to save yourself 5 minutes on your cut.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it. So I think easel does a really good job of converting to your converting your cuts and everything. So I just stick with that.
Yeah, I've not used Easel. I'm proficient with SketchUp and Fusion, obviously from my machine shop experience. So I'm comfortable with both. If I got to do rapid prototyping, it's always SketchUp. It's just faster.
Yeah.
Fusion, I tend to fight that stupid thing to get it to do what I need it to do. But
Yeah,
I was
it's like,
interested
this is
in the,
constrained. This is over constrained. You're like, where is it over constrained?
yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean?
That's
I-
always been my problem.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
do that. It's like Fusion.
But it's good for 3D modeling. I mean, to keep the once you get used to the constraints, it's not as annoying. But it's not SketchUp. You just draw the thing and extrude it, and you're good to go. And I like the SVG export for Fusion too. If you get that plugin, click the SVG, you get an SVG file, so it's nice for flat sheet goods.
Well,
Real good.
for Google SketchUp, it costs $100 a year, but you can get the shop version. So it's just like for makers, right? You can
Yeah.
get the shop version,
Yeah.
and it has all that functionality. You can export 2D flat files. You can
Right.
export. You can import SVG, export SVG, and I do that right now with my printer. That's how I made this.
Yeah.
Everything was in Google. I exported as an SVG and then threw it into Cura and let Cura. I worked with it in Cura and then printed it.
Yeah. I was just curious about the post processor you're using for Fusion, because I ran the G code for the tool for the clamp in both Gerbil and the Maslow, because I was going to prototype this in MDF, and the Maslow toolpath or program itself, the generated G code was almost 4,500 lines longer than the standard Gerbil post, and I compared the two of them, and they put all of the moves on separate lines on the Maslow, and I was wondering why that is.
So
No.
I don't know tons about the old Maslow, but I do know that it can't move the Z-axis and move at the same time, which is
Right. They broke them all up. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it has to do like one, it can't multitask with just that old Omega board. So it would just do one task at a time, like as it's going through it. So
that's an interesting question though. On the one of the status widgets, when you start running these programs, it tells you how many lines were sent. Is that streaming it to the controller, to the do board?
I believe so.
Is there a limit to the size of an NC program that you can, because you start to do 3D carving, those things are tens of thousands of lines long.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that when it's telling you that it's sent, that means that command has been sent and you can't recall it. So it's just gonna follow. It's gonna
do it, yeah.
And
but I watched that number as the program. That would be the other thing that would be helpful from a machinist's perspective, somebody that does CNC. If there was a widget that would show you the G code as it was being executed, so you know what it's going to do next. You know what I mean? A lot of my problem with the thing is I got the thing running. I would love to know what it's going to do next, because the anticipation just kills me. You never know whether it's going to run, drive off the cutting surface or actually make the turn. Yeah.
I think in 1.1.2 you can see. Can you see? I'm trying to remember.
Even 5 lines ahead. Even if it was just, these are the next 5 lines I'm going to execute. Yeah, sure. that would be cool.
Yeah, just so you know, like which ones had been sent to, like which commands had been sent.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would really help advanced users so they could watch it and be able to see like, oh, that's not what I wanted to do or something like that. So.
Well, even novices, right? So because I know once you've had a mishap with the machine and forgot to retract the bit and then jogged it and cut through everything between A and B, it would be nice to know what it was going to do next. So if you're going out 20 inches, it's not going to just keep going outside of your garage. It's going to actually turn at some point. Would be helpful. Anyway, that's just my OCD talking.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I like that. I jot down all these tips. Don't just go into the ether when you guys give me tips and tricks and stuff. It's the same as like putting them on the like Makerverse on GitHub and stuff like that. Like they go forward as like tips and tricks and updates and possible updates and stuff like that too. So it's awesome. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah. I actually just got mine set up and started running. I tried to download the flag from y'all, just to, I guess, kind of get an idea. So I was having a problem getting that without using Easel to get the G code. Is there another way to transfer that SVG into G code? Because I tried to I took the DXF and the DM, whatever the other files were,
Mhm.
and I put them into easel. I could see the toolpath and all that. I guess I have to use easel in order to export the G code.
You have to have something to export it. So like we were talking about a little bit ago with either Fusion 360 or with Easel or another program that actually
There's also
generates-
Carbide Create. Carbide Create's another one too.
Okay.
What was that, Mike? Carbide Create?
Carbide Create.
I'll put that over here.
That's what. It's a free one.
I think
as
I
well.
remember seeing something about that on the Facebook page or one of the other resources for Maker Made.
Yeah, so you have to take that flag file and put it in something to turn it into G code. And then you take that G code and put it in a
And
Maker.
then put in. Okay, so
That's kind of
I got-
the cutting process as it currently
yeah,
is.
I ended up using. I actually ended up making my own flag in.
Nice, like in Easel.
Yeah, I think I used Inkscape to make it, and then
Perfect.
I brought
Yeah.
it over to. I took the SVG over. So when I ran it in Easel, I ended up just doing the free trial to export the G code. So when I first started cutting, it cut the first star perfectly, but it kept cutting when it started to move to the second star. I'm not sure exactly how to fix that.
Like,
Oh, like
it
it
ran-
didn't raise your
Yeah,
Z-
so it was like the tool path just continued from one star to the other. So it cut like a perfect star and then it just started dragging down to the next one.
So, I mean, that sounds like that's something going on with the G code itself, like when it was generated.
Okay.
So
you need to make sure
Go ahead.
your height. Is that your first time doing it?
Yeah.
Is you have to make sure your height, that it retracts height. The I don't know exactly how it is in Easel, but I use a lot of my stuff. I use Fusion a lot, and so
Okay.
with Fusion, it's a little different. Whenever with Fusion with me, I do everything. I do everything in Fusion, and then I export my G code, and then I open my G code in a text editor, and then I literally erase some files, and then I add a Z0, and then it like literally it. I mean, for me, it works perfect. I haven't had any problems. But
Okay.
with Easel, I think there's an option somewhere in there where the I don't know who's from anyone here familiar with Easel?
I am, yeah.
How do you get the retract for the height? You know how to retract height?
I don't know how to retract height. It does that for us when we're generating the
I-
machine.
yeah, I think that's in the advanced settings that where you
I
can
did
go.
the advanced settings. There you go.
to the
That is
side.
right. It's in
Yeah,
the
where it's
advanced
like the little
settings.
deer. I think
Yeah,
it's in
actually,
that where you
Let me
can
see if I
change it.
can bring it up real quick. I have Easel as well.
What too, Brandon, what that could be is like making sure if it's the first time that you're running it, that your 0 is set on your M2 as well. So
Yeah,
making sure that your height is correct, because it might think that it's going up enough, but then it's not coming out of your material.
Yeah, I ended up having, because when I did the calibration, it was like 3/4 of an inch above. And then, as I was going through the calibration, I was like, how do I set my 0? I didn't realize you had to go into the actual Maker Made, where the X, Y, and Z and all that is. And it has like your work your work depth and your.
Yes. Are you using
in the little
1.0.6?
To be honest with you, I probably am, because I just got it. I don't think I've updated the firmware yet.
So that one's a little bit different.
Okay.
So if you just got your M2, it should have the updated firmware on it.
Okay.
So you can run that in 1.1.6 or 1.1.2.
Yeah, I just went over and did like it's got like the little location emblems, like when you're looking at Makerverse when you first open it up, and it's
got the
just sitting
calibrate.
there. Yeah,
It's like
I don't have
on
to
the
click the
side.
calibrate button. It's just on the right side of the screen. It's got like your X, Y, and Z's, and then in all of them it has like the little location thing. So I set my work depth I forgot. There's two different X and Y, or there's two different settings. So my work depth, the 0, I zeroed all the way like flush with the work surface, and then the other one I did like I think I did like a full millimeter above the 0. But like I said, as it was cutting, it did the first one, and then it just drug straight down through
Thanks, Kevin.
it just drug straight down through to the next star, and I was like, oh, that's
So, Matt, I just allowed you for screen sharing. What that could be too is the Z scaling in 1.0.6, your Z scaling might be off. So it thinks it's raising up, but because the scaling isn't set right, it's not raising or lowering to the correct depths.
Yeah.
So that could also be part of it, Ben. It's like, instead of just setting those values at the side, actually setting the Z scaling. That I'm thinking that could be a thing too. I mean, that's one of the both the challenging and fun parts about running robots is like figuring out exactly what the gremlin is.
Yeah.
So there we go, Matt. You got it on there.
Sure. So I've got easel up here. This is my one of the sign that I just made. If you go to advanced here, I think what Mike was talking about is this safety height. You can
okay.
set it to be different if it's not enough. But what I do here for this, so if I was ready to print, or if I was ready to carve this, I go to machine, advanced, I generate the G code, and then I export it, right? And I'll put that out, to a file here. But you can change the safety height, and I think that means how far it brings up the bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Drew.
I think so, but I'm not 100%.
That's correct.
But
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
That is correct.
I was also going to show you here. This is Makerverse, right? It's not connected because I don't have my. It's not in the garage. But
yeah.
Before every print, I always zero the Z-axis, right? I'll get it touching the wood, and then I'll zero it with this button here that is, out.
Yeah. When I originally set mine, I did like the work position. I had it flush up against the work surface. And then I did for the machine position, I zeroed it at a full millimeter above the work surface.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
I always do that for every cut. I'm always messing with the Z just to make sure that everything is good. Yeah, those are the two things that I'd check if I were you.
Okay. And then, one more thing is when it first started cutting, like the first cut, the sled kind of like lifted up off of the work surface. I don't know if that's normal or
like when your bit went in.
Yeah. So, well, as it was doing the first cut, like I have it set to, I think, 1/8 of an inch per cut. As it went in and went deeper, until it kind of leveled itself out, I guess, or cut deep enough and got like the full bit down in there, the sled kind of like angled a little bit. Is that normal?
Brandon, as I understand.
My 10-minute timer. Hello, everybody. My name's Billy Lerman.
Is somebody on another meeting?
There we go. Muted somebody. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, like, so as the bit was going into the plywood, until I guess the bit fully got into there, the sled kind of like angled a little bit, and then it kind of leveled out as it started cutting.
Brandon, I've noticed this too, and I think it depends on the bit you're using.
Okay.
I have a straight up cut bit, and
okay.
If you look at it, it's pretty flat at the tip. It's not like a drill bit. It's not pointed.
Yeah.
It's pretty flat. So and that's one of my complaints about easel. Easel doesn't ramp the bit in. It just pushes the bit in, and then it lets you cut. Well, that upcut bit that I have only cuts really well when it's going side to side. It does not cut really well when you're plunging, right?
Okay.
So at first, yeah, I've noticed that as on mine as well. And what I've heard is you can get a different bit, a different upcut bit, or a different end mill that has a little bit of a tip on it that might plunge a little bit better. Or you just have to deal with it. Sometimes I just come over and I'll just push the router just to hold it on the board, so it makes the hole. Yeah. But I've noticed as well on my 1/4 inch upcut bit.
Yeah, that's what I'm using.
Yeah, I've used like an 1/8 inch one, and that is it doesn't happen on an 1/8 inch one as much. But on my 1/4 inch one, it does a wheelie on the sled or whatever. So.
Oh no, I'm using the 1/8 inch bit right now.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like
the ones that
came with. Like when you first start the screw, sometimes you got to push a little bit to get it to start going in, so it can really start gripping it. Kind of similar to that. And if you've got like I mean, I'm assuming that you have, the weights on there and everything helps
Yeah.
that a lot, like making sure that the bricks are on there to like hold it down to
Yeah.
help it so it doesn't like rock and vibrate. But it can push up like a little bit as it's moving around.
Yeah.
And you can make sure your depths, it's not trying to go in too far too, and like making sure that like a good word of thumb is half the diameter per cut pass, like of your bit. So when you're going in, you're not trying to take that 1/8 inch bit and going, a 1/2 an inch in for pass and stuff like that. And that can help too. So it's just going in on small increments. So it's not trying to push in really far for that first cut. It's doing just a small amount, and then it's going a little bit more and a little bit more. And that could help too. It's like lowering that cut per pass.
Yeah, I think I've got it set to an 1/8 right now.
Okay, so you could try a 16th on that then, if you want.
Okay.
It'll take a little longer, but that can help it too, to give you like some finer detail, and then it won't be pushing up quite as much. And
Okay.
help you as well, I think.
And
So,
one more quick.
checking that bit, and then checking the bit type that you're using, and like pushing it down or something like Matt said sounds like a good plan. And then checking that cut per pass.
Okay.
I think both of those things can help.
And is there a way to modify the toolpath in G-code? I mean, in easel, or does it just
Like,
do it
what do
on
you
its
want to modify? Yeah,
Well,
you can modify some stuff.
just like, like I said, I started with a flag. So I started cutting the first star, and then it just drags down. So could I just set it, like the safety height? Obviously it's got to have something in the code to say, hey, lift, so could I change it to have, instead of having a line going down, or is that just where the tool's going to move to? And if I set the safety height, it should ideally.
I think easel should generate stuff that doesn't mar your work like it's doing. I think you've got a configuration or a calibration issue there, but you can change things in easel, but everything on easel that you change pretty much that I want to change makes you do the pro, count or whatever,
Yeah.
So with the basic one, you have the basic way it cuts and the basic kind of end mills and everything, but yeah, it shouldn't do that. If you get everything zeroed properly, and it shouldn't have a line in your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was just going to show you, this is my 1/4 inch end mill, but if you look, I mean, it's pretty flat on the bottom there.
Yeah.
And when that hits the board and it's trying to drill a hole, it just doesn't want to go. It just sits there and it's like, and it pushes the sled up a little bit, because this is a pretty big, I mean, this is 1/4 inch, but it just doesn't have a tip on it. So
Yeah, we use flat bottom drill bits at work. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No. I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's just makes things a little more difficult to get into the material sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want. I want easel to do something they call a ramp in. So instead of just going straight down and then cutting like this, I want it
just
to go
slowly push in.
Yeah, I want it to slowly like do an angle, but I think that setting is a pro setting in easel, and you have to pay for that.
Okay.
I just think that's something that I don't know. I'm not positive. I haven't figured everything out yet, but I've heard other CNCers call that a ramp in, and I think that's at least for end mills like this, that's preferable. But you can get another end mill that has like a little tip on it that does the same upcut, but has a little tip on it, so you can drill or plunge a little bit better. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, I think working through those couple things of just trying to see like your Z heights and your bit and stuff like that, just trying to really troubleshoot what it is. Cause it should be like, if it's dragging across, something's up, because something's telling the machine to do that.
Yeah.
Some part of the G code is telling the machine to move through there, either not moving up or something's off calibrated or something like that, because it's just following the instructions that it's got. So it should definitely be lifting up when it moves and then going back down.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it.
You bet. Hope that helps. And yeah, if you need any help with that, like you can always join us. We'll be here every week. And you can also send us a message to support at makermade.com.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Does anybody else have any questions? Yeah, Dave, what's up?
Just one other. I'm thinking about the frame. A couple of people last week said they had their machine so that it could roll around. It was portable within their shop. When they did that, I'm assuming the rigidity, you're not getting it from a wall, so you need to have a more rigid structure.
Yes.
Does that mean a torsion box? Are there any plans anywhere where somebody has already done this, or just
So
kind of work out my own thing?
The old Maslow frame is like a portable frame that you can put big locking caster wheels on, and then you can move them around. And it's very much like an easel. Like it sits like at the angle that you need, and you'll build it to like that specification. So yeah, that exists out there with this like old Maslow frame that you can.
And is it rigid enough or flat enough, or could use some improvement?
Yeah, you can move it around. I think Matt might have one that you can move around. No? Okay. You just didn't put it into the studs. I think that was right. Yeah. So when you basically just need to make sure that the back is supported and it's not going to lean over, because it's leaning and there's a lot of weight on it. So you just want to make sure that as it's leaning, it's not going to fall over backwards. So as it's at that angle, and then you got to make sure that there's enough weight on the back and something kicking out the front so it doesn't tip over on the front either. So the old Maslow frame, it has it has it balanced out to work like that. So,
and Dave, that's kind of the fun of this project. The reason I bought the M2 is because I thought, oh great, it mounts to the wall, that'll take up a lot less space. But then I really wanted to make my own mobile cart, but it turned out I just did it to the wall. It still works and it's pretty solid, so I'm leaving it there for now. But I've written a little bit of a design of a new sled, but to be honest, I don't think it's any better than the Maslow one. And like Drew was saying, it might be more tippy than the Maslow one. The Maslow one, they have it balanced pretty well. So if you really want it mobile, just build the Maslow one with some wheels on the bottom.
Sweet. All right, Austin, you got a question?
Yeah. So I just finished mounting my M2 to the frame with the chains. And so I want the sled, the drill bit, to be dead center on my 4x8 plywood sheet, correct?
Correct. Yeah. That's where you're going to set your home. Yeah.
Okay.
That's everyone's goal.
Okay. And I guess you just have to eyeball it to try to get it as close as possible. And I guess when you do the calibration, I guess you can get it better.
So you don't want to eyeball it. You want to measure it. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, I've measured it. I see the crosshairs. I got the crosshairs.
Okay. I thought you were like, oh, that's about center. Okay.
No, but I'm just saying, like, when you set it on there, like if it's off by, an 1/8 of an inch, is that going to be like you find out like, oh, it's really not, it's, I'm an 1/8 of an inch, maybe too left or too high, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So when you get it within 1/8 of an inch of that center, and then you start going through the calibration, where you're doing edge calibration and Holy calibration and stuff like that, it's going to help kind of calibrate the whole thing. And so just getting it as close as possible and using the exact numbers are important for the math when it goes to calibrate it and it's going back in there. So like what I do is like use either like a pen or the bit itself and actually lower it down onto that X. So like I have the X on there and then I lower it down on the exact center. So I know that's where it is. So it's actually touching, and then it actually pushes my sled up a little bit. So I know that that's where it is when so it's not on. And then I just got move it over there. And then I know that it's in the exact center where it's supposed to be. And if you get within like an 1/8 or 1/16, and then you start going through the other calibration steps, it should compensate for that. Because you're getting it super close. So, and then just going through that process is how you can get it to be in under 1 millimeter.
Okay.
Which takes some work. Right. To do it for sure.
Okay. And I had a question. So like, if I was going to use, like, I think in the example in the videos and instructions for calibration, you use like a square to measure how far the machine's moving. An easel, I hope I'm understanding this correct. An easel, when you produce like a square and you click on that shape, that pop-up will come where you can click on the shape tab and it'll give you all the different dimensions. And I guess, I'm looking at it now, So the position of XY, that's where it's going to be cutting on the board. Is that correct?
Yes, so that's like where it's moving around on your wasteboard. It's from 0. So if
Okay.
you want to get your project to start at actual 0, you can move your whole project to like the center of like on that plane. You can move your project here because 0 is actually going to be right here. So when it goes to cut, like it's going to move up into that top right corner and start cutting something, unless you change your workspace or change around where that is. So like that 0 is the exact center of your wasteboard. So things in relation to that are like kind of where they're going to go. So you can click that like 0 home. It's like, it's got that little kind of like an X with like those 5 dots, and you can click on that center one, and then that'll like home your project, and then you'll know like where it's going from in relative to home.
Okay. So I click on the center, and then like, I guess currently it says 7.3 inches for the X, 7.3 inches for the Y. I guess that means it's going to start on my wasteboard or on my panel. It's going to start cutting at that position, 7 up, 7 over.
Yes, from
Okay.
0. Yeah.
From 0.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
make sure that you're like cutting from the edges, like you're cutting the edge too. So then when you measure, you're measuring from the edges of your cut. And you can do, are you working on 1.0.6?
Makerverse?
Yeah, I think that's the version that has
Um,
the square calibration.
I can't remember. I think is it 1.1 or no?
Okay.
I downloaded it from the website. So whatever's
Okay.
up on the website, that's what it is.
Okay, that should be 1.1.2 then. Yeah. So then, yeah, when you're going through and you're like making your calibrations, and you can go and you can measure that to make sure that distance is the same. Just make sure that you're measuring. If you cut from the edge, make sure you're measuring from the edge, because it's kind of hard to get it in the exact, like get your measuring in the exact center of the cut on where it's going through.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, everything's starting. Okay. And second question I had was, so I'm new to CNC. You know, I've built furniture before with just traditional wood tools. So, but all of this is so new to me, as far as like, you know, upcut bits and all that stuff. So does anybody have any like recommendations of like good resources to go explore in to find out, I guess, the world of CNC, of what bit you use for this certain type of cut or this project and all that?
So we're working on consolidating that right now, because it is kind of hard to find all of that information for sure. There is an old blog post that we have that kind of talks about some different types of bits. And 1 second, let me see if I can find it. And that can be a good like jumping off point for you. But one of the things that we're working on doing is making like a full list of like, here are exactly what you just said, is like these type of bits cut this, with examples of what they cut and what they do in different materials and things like that. So we're working on that, and we're working on building out like a better knowledge base where all that information sits. But I would recommend the owners group on Facebook is an awesome place to go and see what people are using and how people are cutting things, and kind of like information and stuff that's on there.
All right, cool. All right. Well, that's all. Thank you very much.
You bet. Yeah. And I'll find that. Let me find that post real quick, and then I will, well, website is being weird. We have some website issues today, and apparently it's back. So I will find that for you, and I'll if you want to send a message of support at makermade.com, then we'll help you send it out. If you say, you know, just like you're looking for recommendations of bits and stuff, and then we'll get you that information.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. See you, Dave. Does anybody else have any more questions? Could say like a little bit over. Does anybody else have any more questions for today?
It's not.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. And yeah, have fun cutting. If you need any help at all, just reach out to us at support@makermade.com, and we'll get you going.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. See y'all next week.
Thanks.